For with God nothing is ever impossible, and no word of God shall be without power or impossible of fulfillment. Another translation says that each word of God contains within itself the power to cause it to come to pass. That is why it is so important for us to speak the Word. That's why just thinking it is not enough. You have to speak it, and when there is voice given to it. Listen, you don't have to go into a corner and sit there and sweat and grunt and strain to make something come to pass. The word that you speak already has within it the power to cause it to come to pass. Let me ask you this question. When you take seed, now most of you in here are not farmers. Some of you have gardens. But most of you have children that have projects at school. And so that's when you get into gardening. It's when they raise tomato plants or something like that. And so all you do is you go to the store and you buy a packet of seed. And you take that seed and you place it down in soil. Now, when you just look at that little tomato seed, there's nothing special about it. You don't hear it ticking. You don't see all kinds of gears and stuff moving in it. It just looks pretty plain, doesn't it? And you take that seed and you put it in the soil and you cover it back up and you keep the soil moist. And something very interesting happens, and that is that within that tomato seed is contained everything that it needs to cause it to grow and bear fruit. Is that right? Now, if you can see that in something natural, it's the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, the Word of God is called the seed. As a matter of fact, remember Peter says that we are born of incorruptible seed. That's how we're born again. The incorruptible seed, that word actually is sperma there. That word for seed. So the Word of God is like seed. It contains within itself the power to cause it to come to pass. But just as you would plant that down in soil, y'all do remember the parable of the sower? Y'all have heard of that, right? I mean, we've looked at it a few times, haven't we, over the years? Maybe 150 gabillion. That might be a slight exaggeration. The parable of the sower, Jesus said this is granddaddy of all parables. If you understand this parable, you'll understand all parables. The next thing he says, the sower sows the word. And what's he been talking about? He's been talking about the different types of ground and sowing a seed and a plant coming up. The Word of God is the same way. You sow that Word and the fruit, whatever the Word is that you're sown, you don't put a watermelon seed in the ground and a pear tree come up, does it? No. It's the like seed. Whatever seed you sowed, that's what it is that's going to bear fruit. And I love that this is what this particular verse is bearing out here. With God, nothing is ever impossible, and no word from God shall be without power or impossible. No word of God shall be without power or impossible of fulfillment. Do you know the only way that that the Word of God will fail to grow is if you dig it up. If you sow it and then you go out and dig it up, you look at it for a day or two and go, I knew this wasn't going to work. And with your mouth, the same mouth that you planted it with, your mouth then uses to dig it up. I knew this wasn't going to work. This is taking too long. Maybe God didn't want me to have that. He's just trying to teach me something. If you'll just have the confidence of when you go out in your yard and you sow grass seed and you go to bed night and day, you don't worry or fret. You know that within a few days, about a week, your dirt's going to start turning green. Now, it doesn't pop up knee high in one day. You just come home, or you maybe wake up in the morning and you look out there and you go, now that that dirt kind of has a little bit of a green tint to it. Right? Same way with your faith. Same way the Word works. You sow that seed and it begins to grow. All right. Then Mary said, as soon as the angel explained it to her, Mary said, Behold, the maidservant of the Lord, let it be to me as according to your word. And the angel departed from her. Man. She said, okay, that's good with me. Then let it be unto me according to as you have spoken to me. Now, this next part of this is awesome. Now Mary arose in those days and went to the hill country with haste to a city of Judea. Now the Bible has already told us where Mary lives. Mary lives in what city? Nazareth. Nazareth is in what region? Galilee, which is in the north. So she lives in Galilee, then you drop down slightly south. What's the next region coming south? I'll help you. Samaria. And then what's the next region further south of that? Judea. So Elizabeth lives in Judea. Actually, she lives in a little town called Ein Karim, which is still around today as far as I know. It's southwest of Jerusalem. Today by car, it takes you 2 hours on a highway to get from Nazareth to Ein Karim. Kerem. Back in Mary's day, you couldn't quite make it in 2 hours. It's 90 miles. Hill country. So this is not 90 miles on the flat. This is walking up in hill country. The Bible doesn't say Joseph went with her. So she heads out by herself. Now, when I say by herself, I don't mean alone. I mean, Joseph didn't go with her. People in that day typically traveled with others. There were caravans going through, and you would join up. Think of our Western history, wagon trains. You know, somebody typically didn't get on a horse by themselves and go out across the West. You usually joined up with a wagon train or another group of people that were going out there. So, all right, she's just found out that she's going to have a son. Now, who is she going to tell in Nazareth? Can anybody in Nazareth relate to her? No, what are they going to do? They're going to ostracize her. Some may even want to stone her. Because when she says she is with child, and Joseph knows he's not the dad, this issue is we find this recorded in Matthew's gospel. And the angel of the Lord has to appear to him and say, it's okay, go ahead and marry her. All this is good. We don't know to what degree Joseph understood what was going on. He was just obedient. I mean, come on. It's not like this happens a lot. Very unusual. As a matter of fact, we only know of it happening one time in the history of man. So, not a lot of literature you can gather on it. So, she can't tell the people that are around there. So, what does she do? She knows of one person that she can go to that understands what it is that she's going through. So, she sets off on a... In other words, to be around someone of like and precious faith, it was worth it to her to travel 90 miles to walk, as far as we know she could have ridden a donkey. We don't know. But we know that it was 90 miles. Still is 90 miles. To have that, we call it now, in churches today, we call it the sense of community. To be around people of like and precious faith.